Agony Wounds is the third full-length album from Obscene. This is an Indianapolis, Indiana-based death metal band, and one that's basically been a quartet for most of their life. They've switched in a couple of different guitarists over time, and they've worked pretty hard at putting together what is a very high standard for old school death metal, and essentially stuff that's probably most inspired by Asphyx, Obituary, and bands like Morgoth that were kind of vestigial beyond the early showing of late 80s Death, the band Death. But they've also worked in a little bit of melodic death metal affect to some of their work. It does stay about as simple as that. They've made some albums were a little bit more accessible, were straight to the point. Others were just a little bit just straightforward, like their first one. All together, we get this sense that this is the way the old school death metal was presented before 2010. There's a very straightforward, very direct style. It's got clear influences from this, that, and the other. And basically, it's like, what if the vocalist for Early at the Gates and that Timber approached songs that were about as aggressive as maybe the Rack from Asphyx? And that's the way I would have sold it back in 2008, and that's the way it comes across today. But let's listen to a song here, and we'll get a little bit deeper into what's kind of cool about this third record and where they've gone with it. That's more interesting than where they were. But I think the important thing to ask yourself when you've got a death metal record in your hands is, how am I going to live with this? How is this going to last over time? And is this worth my time? And I think the thing with Obscene is I've always gotten the same answer is, yeah, of course, it's not just because it's that classic. It's just that they've put a lot of energy. You can tell they give a shit about what they're doing. And this isn't just a throwaway side project. They love death metal, and you can feel that in the care they put into the songwriting, the craft of every song, and also the attention paid to style and production values. It does feel like a serious record in that sense, but it doesn't feel like it's pretentious in any sense either. They know exactly where to hit in that sense. I don't think that they're maybe the smartest person in the room and trying to be. It's more that they're pulling off the best songs of a lot of their peers and putting a lot of memorable moments into each record. So really the devil's in the details. Is this the best record of the year in terms of just pure songwriting? There's some argument to be made if you're a fan of just classic death metal and want to see something a little bit different done with it. Every song here has its own hook. It's got its own little idea that sprouts into something that is memorable, and I think they've gotten better at that with each record. Now, does it have the ripping, cold death metal energy of the first record? Not quite. Does it have some of the tuneful aspect of the second record and the easy accessibility of that album? It does. And so there's a little bit of everything they've done before feeling additive on Agony and Wounds, which is kind of a more of a miserable record. There's kind of a lower mood to it because of those slower songs. And so the details are what build that feeling, and it does feel like there's an atmosphere forming around Obscene that is more substantial with each recording. And that's kind of what sticks with me, is that there's an atmosphere to this record. There's a feeling conveyed to some degree, but at the end of the day, it is kind of in that realm of what people call meat and potatoes death metal, even though they're obviously doing a lot more than a lot of records that you describe as that. So pretty interesting thing to consider. For me, this is a very high recommendation. It's one of the better death metal bands out of the United States right now, and they've been very consistent between their three records. There's good staying power with this group, a lot of replayability on their past records. This one has held up just as well as the last two have. I think I own all three, so that's kind of what my endorsement would be in general. Check it out for yourself. It released today on July 12th, and read my review for more of my thoughts.